Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all the members of our panel for being here today. Dr. Kelly, you are head of environmental analytics, is that right? At what's the name of your company?
Resilience.
Resilience, okay. You're a PhD?
That's correct.
Where'd you do your work?
At the University of Cambridge.
Okay. If you were king for a day, doctor, and you were not fettered or constrained by any political considerations, can you just list for me, I don't think we'll have time for you to explain each one at length, but list for me the 5 things you would do, king, to make America carbon neutral by 2050?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. The first and most important thing is to decarbonise the energy sector. So I'd remove fossil fuels from the economy as fast as possible and transition to renewable energy. I would then require businesses to disclose their financial risks so that the community can understand, investors and shareholders can understand what those risks are and make better investment decisions. I would then work with the international community to make sure that the grid around the world is decarbonised. I would also work on agriculture, move to agriculture and other sectors to make sure that we can...
Well, that's not very specific. Let me try it again. Give me the 5 things. You're king now, but for one day. 5 new rules in the United States of America, so we'll be carbon-free by 2050.
I would put in a rule to make sure...
You'd get rid of oil and gas. That's the first one. That was the most specific.
Require companies to disclose climate-related risks.
Okay, that's 2.
I would invest in new technologies to decarbonise industrial processes to reduce emissions.
Okay, and what's 4?
Work with international communities to...
Work with the community, okay. Is there another one?
And to work with political leaders across...
Work with political leaders, yeah. You sound like a consultant. All right, let's take get rid of oil and gas. And what would you replace it with?
Renewable energy.
What kinds?
Wind and solar are presently the most cost-effective.
Nuclear?
I'm personally not in favour of nuclear.
You don't like nuclear. Okay. How much will it cost and over what period of time do we have to get rid of all oil and gas and go to wind and solar?
So the good thing about wind and solar is that it's now more cost-effective than producing new...
Over what period of time would we have to make this transition?
Well, we need to do it before 2050 to get to the US.
If we do it to 2050, will we be... I'm trying to understand what it... Should I give up? Dr. Rose, can you give me, if you were king for a day, the 3 things you would do?
We'll start on something that you might find more attractive. I'd invest.
I'm not interested in attractive.
Right. No, I'd invest.
But I've been to so many of these hearings
right.
where people come and talk about catastrophe, and you say, okay, what do we do about it? And you get nothing but nonsense. Right. So if you could give me, this is your chance, just 3 specific things, King, that you would do.
So I would invest in carbon capture and storage. I don't think we need to get rid of all fossil fuels immediately.
That's 1. Number 2.
Number 2, I would pass a renewable portfolio standard for the U.S., which calls for a shift to renewables and electricity generation. So I recently completed a study where the...
Don't have time. What's number 3?
I would pass a cap and trade bill in the U.S. to find the least cost ways of dealing with climate change.
Tell me how that would work.
You essentially place a cap on emissions, you give permits or allowances to entities, and you allow them to trade. That trading shifts the cost burden to the lowest cost entities. We found that that can save 70% of the potential costs of dealing with climate change as opposed to passing across the board.
You put a tax on carbon?
Well, it's different than a tax because you can freely grant these allowances and then it's trading. So it's not a tax. It's different than a tax.
All right. How much do you think all this will cost? Your best guess.
I don't have a dollar figure, but the figure is a lot lower than what I've heard on this side of the aisle today.
Well, you think we ought to just do it and then worry about the cost?
No, I think we should do studies.
What's your, I mean, you advise the UN and you're at
Right.
USC and that's a pretty good school.
Right.
What's your best guess about what it'll cost us to decarbonize by 2050?
Well, one thing I'd like to mention to the gentleman, Brown, that it's not the government paying this cost.
Yes, but could you give me a figure first? I
would say it might cost us 2% of GDP per year. So that's in terms of the U.S. to start, and that's a couple of $100 billion.
Couple of $100 billion
to start, and then it'll level off.
Is that every
and
year?
eventually, I think we'll save money.
I don't know why I can't get straight answers, okay?
right.
Y'all want to talk about the problem, but you never want to answer the question.
No, I've been answering it.
Well, no, you haven't. I'm just asking for a figure. Does anybody have a figure that it would cost to decarbonize by 2050? That's all I'm asking. Does anybody have one?
So my answer is you start out with $200 billion and you get down to a cost savings by 2040.
What would be the total cost by 2050, you think?
At most, a couple of $100 billion by 2050 over 25 years.
So you think we can totally decarbonize America by a couple of $100 billion?
Well, I didn't say totally decarbonize because remember I said carbon capture
neutral.
and start.
You're right, carbon neutral.
Right.
Does anybody disagree with that?
I personally, that estimate is probably, is that a yearly figure, I'm assuming?
No, that's total.
Total,
That's
200 billion.
200 billion for the whole
for
package.
total with some.
What is your figure, Professor?
I'm not prepared to give a figure.
You don't know. You just want us to do it and pay for it later.
it's
Do you have a figure, ma'am?
No, sir, this is really out of my area of expertise.
Can you, either you gentlemen?
Senator, I don't have a figure, and I wouldn't want to do the task you assigned me. But if you did, and I had to do that, I would take the Green New Deal and implement it. I would put the U.S. economy on a...
How much would it cost?
It'll cost our country, our liberties, our economy. We'll have to nationalize...
How much will it cost?
Our country.
Okay. Do you have an idea?
I have seen estimates that are a much higher percentage of GDP than Dr. Rose has indicated.
I mean, it's frustrating, folks. I don't mean to be rude, but I can't tell you how many hearings I've been through. And you say, well, the world is coming to an end. Okay? All right. How much will it cost? We don't know.
The point is, Senator, that the cost of doing
We're
nothing
not
is higher.
sure. We need to get back to you. No fair-minded policymaker is going to embark on something that might cost a minimum of $200 billion. Based on what I've read, that's low. I don't know why you won't just answer straight.
It's a difficult question to answer because...
Of course it's difficult. That's what you're here for.
Technology advances at different rates, and so if...
You want us to just go start and then worry about the cost later? Come on, Professor. This isn't Cambridge. These are taxpayers
We
paying
need
for
to
all
make
this.
hard decisions now to transition...
Well, then how
economy
much will they
to-
cost?
We need to invest...
You don't even know.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.